into Smudge the Literary Cat, Fearsome Predator. Yes, very much so. Yeah. What is Smudge reading? Good grief, she's reading Edward Upward, The Railway Accident and Other Stories. Obscure, Smudge. Obscure. Hi, this is Outlaw Bookseller. I thought I'd do a quick recent acquisitions clip based on some stuff I bought in Cardiff. You'll have seen the Cardiff clip by now, and some other stuff I'm reading at the moment. I have changed some of the books behind me for those of you who are getting bored with seeing the same things. You're just seeing sort of some crappy fantasy novels at the top there. Some nice hard covers there now instead, which is much classier. So we seem to have an overcast day at last, which is, it's actually quite tolerable today temperature-wise, which is great because it is the autumn after all. So without further ado, let's start and have a look at what I picked up in Cardiff. I don't do huge book hauls unless I go somewhere like Hay&Y, because I've got so much, and you've got to be selective. Anybody can buy a pile of books, but being selective is the way I collect. So, but first I want to talk about a film which I picked up on DVD for $5.99 in HMV in Cardiff. And this is A Dark Song, which a fairly dull title. I mean, as soon as I see a horror movie with the word dark in the title, I tend to lose interest. But I streamed this on Prime, and British film made in Wales with Welsh and Irish money, low budget, some great actors, and it's about a woman seeking something, and she goes in search of redemption, vengeance, who can say, by contacting a magician who is a sort of fat bearded bloke, but I've got more hair than him, so don't start, talking about the Abramelin ritual which Aleister Crowley performed. Now, there's nothing in the info dump in the film, there's no title cards, there's nothing that tells you that this is based on a sort of Crowley ritual. You just have to know that, and luckily being a well-read chap who went through my Crowley phase a long time ago, it was sort of obvious to me what it was about. But it's great. I mean, if you like intelligent horror, I would call it more fantasy than horror maybe, but it does have the odd scary moment. It's really good. $5.99. There is a Blu-ray, which is an import, because of course you can't get anything made on a low budget in Britain on a Blu-ray. That would be terrible. You've got to get it from the States. So Dark Song, check it out, really good. So I got that from HMV in Cardiff, which claims to have the biggest range of CDs in Europe, or at least I think they did until their Birmingham store opened. But moving on, so you will have seen in the Cardiff video, I went to a place called Bear Island Books, and I showed some Philip Jose Farmers. Well, I picked up Stations of the Nightmare, which, as you can see, has a remainder punch in it just there, and it's got wonderful yellow text block. I used to have a copy of this, and I think I've read it. I think it was quite minor, but I must have got rid of it because I got rid of loads of my Farmers and wish I'd kept them, because lots of verve. I tend to like his more obscure stuff, so this was a real treat, and that was £2, so you can't really go wrong. Looks unread, fantastic. So also on the Farmer front, you would have seen me fondling probably, I think it was either this or the third volume in the series, and this is Dayworld Rebel. Farmer originally wrote a story called The Sliced Crosswise Otherwise on Tuesday or Thursday World, I can't think, which was the basis of Dayworld, which he wrote years later in the 80s. And I quite enjoyed Dayworld. There's an overpopulation premise. People have to sleep a number of days a week. And while they're asleep, other people are awake. So they manage to sort of live in shifts, as it were. And it's about a chap who sort of breaks that system. And, it's enjoyable hokum, but it's in my beloved Grafton livery. I really love this livery, especially from, Mayflower, Panther, Granada, Grafton. Same thing, they just went through different identity changes as time went on. And I've got very fond memories of selling lots of these. And I haven't actually read this one, I don't think. I think I only read the first one. So I've been looking to pick these up in decent nick. And I am thinking of getting a hardcover the first one because it's got a lovely jacket. So a bit of PJF. Good solid adventure writer with the odd sort of taboo breaking thing. So that was great. Something else that I picked up, and I saw entirely by accident when I was in Troutmark Books, which is the biggest second-hand bookshop, was this. the railway accident and other stories, again, which I used to have. This is a Penguin Modern Classic from 70s, and I had a copy which wasn't very nice, and it must have gone in a pan. It's very interesting stuff. Edward Upward was sort of like an English surrealist writer who moved towards Marxism, and of course on the cover this is a Magritte, so I'll show you that in a bit more detail. Let's get the glare off it. Very, very nice. I don't think this has been in print for a long time. A small press, possibly Enitharmian, did some of Edward Upward's stuff. And these stories initially are set in a fantasy world that Upward and his chum Christopher Isherwood created, which was called Mortmere. And they're sort of mildly surrealistic, odd little books, but really fantastic little example of English strangeness. So that was £2.50, so you can't really go wrong, you know, so it's lovely. The real sort of thing that I picked up that excited me at Troutmark was this book here, RX for Tomorrow by Alan E. Norse, and this is a Faber first edition. What, Faber? Science fiction, I hear you exclaim. Yes, Faber did lots of SF. They published Brian Aldiss in the late 50s, and they went on to publish people like Roger Zelazny, Christopher Priest, Robert Holdstock, Gary Kilworth, and there's a chap there called Charles Monteith, and when he left, I think it was the very, very end of the 70s, early 80s, they lost interest in SF, and that was a shame because they did some nice stuff, and so do watch out for some Faber SF. Now, this is an interesting book because this is short stories, and this is the only Alan E. Norse I have, and I've been meaning to pick some up for years and years and years. I've read bits and pieces in anthologies. Alan E. Norse was a doctor, and he specialised in medical SF. And what's interesting about this is the guy who wrote The Blade Runner. Now, when I say The Blade Runner, you know the title Blade Runner from the film which is the adaptation of Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, blah, 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 which we all know. But this one is interesting because, say, he wrote this book called The Blade Runner, which is a short novel about medicine in the future, and I think it's about organ smuggling, something like that. I think it's rather akin to Dr. Adder, which came out later. I don't have a copy, a friend of mine has. I really must pick one up one day because it's quite uncommon and it's collectible because of its association with the film. But the question is, how did a novel by Alan E. Norse end up as the title of a Philip K. Dick film adaptation? Well, you know, you can look this up, and more people know it these days, but it's still not that well known. If you look in the credits of Blade Runner, you'll see a line that reads, "Our thanks to Alan E. Norse and William S. Burroughs for our use of their title." Now, I can't recall how Blade Runner got appended to the film, but what happened was that William Burroughs read this and he loved it. Now, Burroughs read loads and loads of SF, and he loved Norse's Blade Runner. So he wrote a screen treatment. So it's a prose short version. It's published by Blue Wind Press, and it was reissued by a small publisher last year in a large format. I can't think what they're called now, but they've done a nice job of it. It's out of print for years. I got mine way back in the 80s. And the Burroughs screen treatment is called Blade Runner, a movie. So it's his screen treatment. It was never made. So somehow Burroughs and Norse ended up getting that credit. I don't know why Burroughs got the credit, because he didn't come up with the word Blade Runner. It was Alan E. Norse. So maybe there was some legal thing. Who knows? Maybe they thought we'd better do this, or those guys will kick off. So I'm looking forward to reading this, because I've only read a few scattered short stories, and this was £10, which is fantastic. It's in a really nice nick. At the moment, as I said the other day, I've been going through a Stanislaw Lem binge, and I stopped that after 2 books, and I do mean to get back into it, and instead I started a Doris Passerchia binge, and this is her second novel, The Star Rider, which I remember as a women's press B format book in the 80s. And it's funny, Passerchia, I mentioned her in one of my other recent acquisitions videos, because she keeps popping up, and I was talking about her to Tom Toner, a friend of mine, science fiction writer, lives in the city, and Scott Bradfield was talking about Passerchia as well. She just recently turned 90. She hasn't written anything since the 80s. I think she had to give up for family reasons, and she was active from the late 60s to the beginning of the 80s. She was mostly published by Door, and this is really, really bizarre. It's a bit like, if you imagine a Boy and His Dog recast as a Western with dimension hopping animals, and it's really hard to describe. There's like a dimension hopping horse cum dog, and the narrator is a woman, and it's set in a distant future where people are spread across the universe, and they seem to have forgotten where Earth is, and Earth is called Double Luck. And it's actually written like a Western. People sort of are making their way across the universe trying to find this planet called Double Luck, where, you know, everything is absolutely fantastic, and it's really, really interesting. I'm only a little way in, but utterly bonkers. It's great. So I decided that I was going to pick up a few searches, and I got her first novel, Mr. Justice, here in a really nice Dobson little hardcover. You normally find these in places like Hay&Y, and they're in a complete state, but this one's really nice, so I was really pleased with that one as well. And I do like Dobson. They're so sort of bog standard, straightforward, cheap, simple, and yet they have a real charm. They did all sorts of great stuff. So that's my recent acquisitions for the moment. I'm going to stop now. I'm going to let you consider Bladerunner and its secret title, and I'm going to go back to reading Star Rider and get into some more Doris before I flip back to Stanislaw Lem. This is Outlaw Bookseller, recent acquisitions. There'll be a Hay&Y one coming soon, hopefully. Out for now.